America's support for Israel is ironclad. That's the message President Biden gave to Israel's president yesterday in the Oval Office. Biden also vowed that Iran would never acquire a nuclear weapon.
Well, President Herzog's visit comes during a time of deep division between the Biden administration and the Israeli Prime Minister's government. Chris Mitchell has the details from Jerusalem.
In the Oval Office, the two leaders talked about the danger of a nuclear Iran and the recent call between President Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
As I affirmed to Prime Minister Netanyahu yesterday, America's commitment to Israel is firm, and it is ironclad. And we're committed as well to ensure that Iran never acquires a nuclear weapon.
I was pleased to hear about your conversation with Prime Minister Netanyahu, in which you focused on our ironclad military and security cooperation, because there are some enemies of ours that sometimes mistaken the fact that we may have some differences as impacting our unbreakable bond.
Herzog told reporters they also discussed the current debate in Israel over judicial reform, legislation President Biden has deeply criticized.
I reiterated my commitment, as I said before. Israeli democracy is strong and resilient, and we should definitely see the current debate in Israel with all its facets as a tribute to the strength of Israeli democracy.
The Israeli president also met with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and the White House National Security Team. Beneath the handshakes and ceremony, some Israeli analysts like Carolyn Glick say the visit glosses over deep policy divisions between the Biden administration and the Netanyahu government.
The Biden administration and Biden himself have adopted policies in relation to Iran, in relation to Hezbollah-controlled Lebanon, and in relation to the Palestinian terrorist organizations that run the Palestinian Authority in Judea and Samaria and Gaza that all represent dangers to Israel. They're all strategic threats to Israel.
Meanwhile, in Israel, the controversy over judicial reform continues as demonstrators block highways and train stations in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. And the first piece of legislation on judicial reform could become law as soon as next week. That bill seeks to change the way the Supreme Court can limit or overturn laws passed by the Knesset. Gordon?
Chris, how serious are the demonstrations? How serious are the divisions? I've heard yesterday from someone in Israel that they're using words like civil war and crossing red lines. Well, what does that mean?
Well, what it means, Gordon, is that these demonstrations have been going on for 7 months, and they're very disruptive to daily life. For example, blocking the airport at Ben Gurion, train stations and highways. But the most serious concern, Gordon, is the threat of reservists in the Army and the Air Force in sensitive security positions of not serving. In fact, one of the protests of reservists is scheduled later today in Tel Aviv. And this is where the red line comes in. It's something Prime Minister Netanyahu, he addressed this earlier this week. He said that incitement not to serve or not serving directly endangers the security of all of Israel. And he said it emboldens Israel's enemies that could lead them to strike out at Israel. And he says it undermines the discipline within the military, which is what the military, any military, is based on. And he promised to take action against all those who refuse to serve. So, Gordon, that's where the red line comes in, and that's where some of this talk about civil war comes in.
Well, there are warnings that Israel is in the middle of a perfect storm. And, you know, whenever you appear weak and you've got enemies both within and without, it's going to be obvious trouble for Israel. Are you concerned about that?
A lot of people are concerned about that, Gordon. You know, first of all, as you said, Israel's enemies, they're watching the internal political divisions here in Israel. They sense weakness, you know, especially as some in the military are refusing to serve. For example, up on the northern border, Hezbollah has been gathering up there with at least 4 incursions into Israeli territory. These provocations, they're threatening Israeli forces, and actually they're carrying out some scenarios of attacking the northern Galilee. Others, as part of this perfect storm, see the Biden administration hostile to the current coalition. And then again, they see Iran continuing to march to a nuclear power. So given all the political chaos at home, the Biden administration hostility, and Israel's enemy preparing for war, That's why people see right now this perfect storm, why so many believe it's important to be praying for the peace of Jerusalem.
Well, is the U.S. sending mixed messages in the middle of all of this? Yesterday, President Biden is pledging ongoing support, ironclad support for Israel. There's no way in his administration Iran ever gets a nuclear weapon. At the same time, you see negotiations with Hezbollah, the Palestinian Authority, and attempted negotiations with Iran. It seems to be mixed signals, confusing signals.
I would say mixed signals is a great way to put it, Gordon. First of all, you know, some people here feel like the Biden administration isn't interfering with Israel's internal affairs by coming out so strongly about judicial reform. Biden's also said that this is the most extreme coalition he's seen in the past 50 years. And while many people are plotting the phone call the other night between Netanyahu and President Biden, it's really taken 7 months to extend an invitation, and it's not even certain he's going to get to the White House. Also, some people see it's the influence of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. And all of this, you know, the Iran deal is probably the most serious, and that's why there's such a division between the Biden White House and the Netanyahu coalition about what to do about Iran's nuclear program. And Netanyahu has said over and over again he's not going to be bound by any deal between the U.S. and Iran.
All right. Well, Chris, thanks for your insight.